Activity, the global problem of the harmful use of alcohol, a behavior change approach. The activity is creation of guidance for nurses to play a part in addressing the problem. Professor asks, why did you choose this activity? Some students try to answer. One student said, because it's prevalent in Scotland. The professor added, this is quite useful for your reflection. Why did you choose this activity? What do you hope to learn? What did you already know? What are your knowledge gaps? Professor speaking. The session will be an hour and a half. We added half an hour to the normal 1 hour of the activity so that we could use it to start to ask some questions that could help you to write your reflection. We are going to have a group discussion and hopefully we can learn from each other. Oh, that would be good. The professor reminded us that there were some resources and pre-learning material that we were provided with on the module site and that we should have read before the activity. If you have done that, this will make the session a lot easier, she said. If not, you'll have to go through them, she added. The professor goes on explaining the structure of the session. Today's activity session is split into 6 parts. Part 1, small group discussion about case studies, roughly 10 minutes. Part 2, the whole group feedback and discussion about case studies enhancing motivation to reduce alcohol consumption, roughly 10 minutes. Part 3, small group working to create guidance on what nurses can do in their day-to-day practice to enhance patients' motivation to reduce their use of alcohol, roughly 15 minutes. Part 4, the whole group sharing of guidance created, roughly 10 minutes. Part 5, individual reflection on activity and associated learning, 15 minutes. Part 6, the whole group reflective discussion about activity and associated learning. You quiet. 10 minutes. Okay, the professor mentioned that if we were comfortable remaining in our current table groups, there wouldn't be a need to split us up. Okay? The professor said, I have printed the 2 case studies and I will put the questions up on the whiteboard. I will hand out the case studies first. After handing out the copies of the 2 case studies to every table, the professor said that we could start to read them. Case studies. Case study A. Afiva is a 21-year-old student who has been drinking alcohol for the last 3 years. This is water. She started the behavior for recreation and socialization with friends during her studies as she didn't want to be the only one not drinking when they went out to the pub. She found that she felt happier when she had a drink, and she has gradually started drinking more and more, to the point that she's having at least 1 drink every day and she's drinking regularly when alone. Her grades at college have been dropping. Her parents have observed her becoming distracted, isolated, and often having issues controlling her anger outbursts. She is patient in your ward, and her parents have asked if you could have a word with her about her drinking. Her response to you suggesting that she might be drinking too much alcohol is, so that's what she says. I don't have a problem. I'm fine. Difficulties at college have nothing to do with my alcohol. Drinking alcohol won't cause harm. It's not harmful. Come on, all the students do it. It's weird not to, Strudo. Speaking personally. And it helps me to feel happy and relaxed. My parents are just being over the top as usual. Case study B. Dave is a 35-year-old gentleman working as a taxi driver who has been dependent on alcohol for the last 10 years. He drinks to help him cope with his personal problems, including health issues and money worries. Recently, he has increased his drinking to almost 9 units per day, normally in the evening, but sometimes in the morning. On the days he drinks in the morning, he calls in sick to work, and he also neglects other responsibilities at home. This is leading to a lot of arguments with his wife. He tells you all this while in for a routine checkup and says, I know I should do something about my drinking as it's affecting everything, my relationships, my work, my health. I've spent a lot of my savings on alcohol. The thing is, drinking really helps me cope with all my worries. It helps me to forget about them for a little while at least, so I feel better. Case study instructions. Okay? Please read the case study vignette and work together to answer the following questions. What tells you that this person is drinking too much alcohol? This is the first question. Second question. Why does this person drink alcohol? 3A. What stage of change in the process of behavior change is the person at? How do you know that? This is the B. How do you know that? Then 4A. What strategies could you as a nurse use to enhance the person's motivation to reduce the amount of alcohol he or she drinks? Then 4B. Give an example of how the conversation might go if you used those strategies. The group is reading and trying to answer the question. The professor asks, what tells you that the person is drinking too much? Answers. She's drinking every day. She's drinking by herself. Why does she drink alcohol? To feel included. It started as a way to fit in, but then it became a way to relax her and make her happy. A way to relax and make her happy. Let me delete this here. Then it has become a coping mechanism. That's right. What stage of change is the person at? She's right at the very start, the answer, right? She's right at the very start. She hasn't even acknowledged it as a problem. She's not thinking about any changes. This is the hardest person to deal with. Now is the professor speaking. They're just not open to any changes. Depending on how you can work things, it can make them go even farther into denial. You don't want to push them into that direction. You want to encourage them toward, I do have a problem, I need to do something about it. When you have a difficult patient like this, it is important to remember that we are not going to solve every problem with one conversation. You're just trying to sow a seed and get them to start to move in that direction. So how do you know that she is at that stage? She's blaming the student's culture. That's how we know. She's blaming the student's culture. She's not taking any personal responsibilities. That's right. So what strategies would you as a nurse use to enhance her motivation to reduce the amount of alcohol that she drinks? What strategies would you use as a nurse? Students' answers. We thought, a group is speaking, that she's probably considering herself to be young and she had this conversation before and she thinks that everyone is nagging at her. So we thought that the first step might be to leave some leaflets next to her. It is good for her to have some reading about this topic and have some initial comprehension of it. Like, for example, the fact that there is no safe limit for alcohol. And if we start talking to her about this topic, she might think that we are lecturing her. The professor said, yes, you don't want to be lecturing her. So yes, one thing that you could do is leave some information. But it's probably a good idea to ask her if we can leave some information. Put it on them. It's up to them what they do rather than you telling them what to do. Anything else? Asked the professor. Answers. Educating her on the effects of alcohol, what it does to the body, rather than say you must stop drinking. Educating her on how harmful alcohol can be. Education is to empower her, said the professor. Another thing to consider is the fact that we don't know the reasons why people do things. Sometimes people don't want to disclose those reasons, thinking that others might not understand. We need to try to find strategy to help them, not as lecturers, but providing a space where they can actually think, maybe what I'm doing might be harmful, I'm suggesting, because the recording wasn't clear. Let's look at case study B. So, what tells you that this person is drinking too much alcohol? Calling sick to work for drinking in the morning. There's a few red flags here. And and why does this person drink? To forget the arguments with his wife and his problems. Again, it's a coping mechanism, says someone else. At what stage of change is he at? Contemplation. He is aware that he has a problem but has no plans to change or to reduce the amount of alcohol he's drinking. How do you know that? Because he said it and he knows he should do something about it. He's spending the money that he's short of. He is in a vicious circle. So what could you do here as a nurse to help this man to move forward? We could use the OARS, somebody said. A student in my group explains briefly what OARS is. OARS is a foundational set of communication skills used in motivational interviewing. MI is a counseling approach designed to help individuals explore and resolve ambivalence about behavior change, such as addressing alcohol use issues. What is OARS? OARS stands for 1. Open-ended questions. These encourage individuals to share more about their thoughts and feelings, fostering deeper understanding. Example, what are your thoughts on how drinking affects your daily life? Affirmations. Number 2. Positive statements that recognize a person's strength and efforts, building confidence. Okay? Example, it's commendable that you're thinking about making changes. Number 3. Reflections. Active listening techniques where the listener mirrors back what the person has said, demonstrating understanding and empathy. Example, it sounds like you're feeling conflicted about your drinking habits. Number 4, summaries, recapping the main points of the conversation to ensure clarity and reinforce key messages. Example, so far we have discussed your concern about drinking and your desire for change. These techniques are designed to create a supportive environment that encourages individuals to talk about their experiences and motivations for change. So it's kind of a conversational style. It's about empowering the patient, not lecturing them. You are asking the question, why are you drinking? Do you think there might be any benefits if you reduce the drink? The answer needs to come from them. It's about getting them to think about what the benefits would be. The other parts of the OARS says that you are listening. You are understanding. You kind of care. You are not there just to lecture. A student added, okay, we need to look at them holistically. Oh, very nice word this one, eh? Holistically, not just at the alcohol. Maybe there's something we could recommend regarding the financial situation, his relationship situation. Professor said, yes, they could impact on this need to drink alcohol. Another student, because he is at this stage of recognizing the problem, he might be ready to accept help. The professor says, it's about how you do that. How do you do that? It's about asking permission. Would it be okay if I share with you this information, right? Sorry guys, 1 second. So it's about asking permission. Would it be okay if I share with you this information on how you could get help? Would anyone be able to act out because it would be beneficial to see how the conversation could go? Oh, so the professor is asking, would anyone be able to act out, like to be an actor basically, or actress? Because it would be beneficial to see how the conversation could go. Anyone up for that? Nobody seemed to be happy to do that, especially myself. I didn't feel ready to do any of that. I would feel shy in acting in front of other people, and especially people of other classes. I mean, I would do it, but only if I was personally asked to. I wouldn't do it voluntarily. I'm happy to be the patient, said the professor, if someone wants to act as the nurse. It is a good learning experience and it is quite fun. No one was happy to do it, unfortunately. The professor said, so now we are going to see what nurses can do in their everyday practice to help patients in regard to alcohol consumption. Part 3. Small group working to create guidance on what nurses can do in their day-to-day practice to enhance patient motivation to reduce their use of alcohol. Roughly 15 minutes. Tips for creating your guidance, okay? So first of all, do your research. Use what you have learned from the case study discussions together with the self-directed learning for the activity and the broader week 1 self-directed learning. Remember the motivational interviewing approach and associated strategies and techniques for enhancing motivation to change. You might also want to include information about why it is important for nurses to enhance patient motivation to reduce their use of alcohol. You could also include an example case study in your guidance. Then, keep it simple. Keep it simple. Keep your message simple and clear. Use easy to read fonts and colors and focus on the most important information. Avoid cluttering your guidance with too many details or graphics. Use visuals to make your guidance more engaging and memorable. Consider using visuals such as photographs, infographics, or illustrations. Visuals can help to communicate your message more effectively and make your guidance stand out. Remember the 7 C's. C with a little s. C's for effective communication. Developed in the 1950s by Cutlip and Center. 1. Clear. Be clear about the goal and purpose of your message. 2. Concise. Stick to the point and keep your message short and simple. 3. Concrete. Be clear, not fuzzy. Provide detail but not too much detail. 4. Correct. Make sure your message is accurate and grammatically correct. Coherent. Make sure your message flows well and is laid out logically. Complete. Ensure the recipient has everything they need to understand. Courteous. Make your communication polite, friendly, professional, and open. Professor speaking. These can take whatever shape or form you want, whatever you would think helpful as a healthcare professional. What would help you to kind of remember what you could do in practice. Chatting in the group. The professor talking to other students in the background mentioned PowerPoint as a possible way to do this. The professor came to our table to ask if we were needing any help, and I said, "We got this," even though I wasn't very confident with what we were going to do. The professor asked us, "Are you happy to come here and share and talk to us?" So she wanted one of us to, stand up and go like in front of everyone, okay? And nobody wanted to go to the whiteboard and talk, so she said, "You can just talk from the table," saying what kind of format the group chose to use and what your content is. A group speaker starts to talk and explain what they have done and the material they went through. The importance of using a non-judgmental approach. Next group is ours. So our speaker, we have done a flow chart sort of thing, okay? The stages of change, okay? That, right, led to using ORS to identify at what stages of change they are, identify objectives, and then set goals using SMART. The professor said, yes, if they are at the stage of thinking about goals, you need to know where they are, before you set the goal. Get to know where they are, okay? You have to know where they are, right? Next group speaker, depending on what stage they are at, there's going to be an education part and another part. I can't pick the word. Sorry. A lot of noise. Next group speaker. The R stands for, now here I'm not very clear. The R stands for resistant. I'm not sure about that. Again, recording very not clear, okay? So, and the urge to judge and tell them what to do. So I repeat, the R stands for resistant, not sure, and the urge to judge and tell them what to do. They will tell their point of view, okay? So the patient will tell their point of view, and you can't say, stop drinking, you've been silly, of course. You need to be empathetic in the way that you agree that something happened in their life, and they kind of agree that this might be the problem and the alcohol is used to let them forget. Now, these are very simple phrases that I could, extract from the recording, okay? There might be some slight difference, okay? Okay, perfect. There might not be the exact phrases that were said in that occasion, okay? Anyway, L stands for listening, active listening. E stands for empowering. People will start to think, maybe I'm not so hopeless, maybe I can do it. The professor said it's a conversational style, the motivational interviewing. You're not the expert in this person's life and why are they drinking and how they can change and what the benefits of change will be. The patients are the experts and we are facilitators into them making that change. Next group speaker. The motivational interviewing, I cannot understand their words. Next group speaker. We have done setting realistic goals. Depending on how much they're drinking, just ask them to cut down 1 or 2 units per day. We'll meet on a weekly basis. Okay? Professor, as long as he's happy. Group speaker, yes, hopefully going forward he can see differences in his physical and mental health. I am slightly feeling better, he could say. That allows him the chance to see the positive coming out of it. Maybe he's working more often. Maybe the relationship with his wife is slowly getting better. He needs to set realistic goals, not too drastic, according to the speaker. Doing it slowly, it gives him the opportunity to think, it's not a dramatic change. Another group speaker, we spoke about education. If you give too much education, that person might want to stop altogether. Not alcohol consumption, but the therapy. In brackets, right? Not alcohol consumption, but the therapy. Okay, in parentheses. Anyway, the professor says, my background is in health psychology, and in psychology, in the past, we used to think that fear was a way to get people to drink less or to change anything. Fear, right? The factor to change anything you wanted. If maybe they are scared, we could get them to be scared of what would happen if they didn't change. But actually, it doesn't work, and it is not right to do. People can be scared, but fear can also paralyze them. It does not help them to move forward. A student, it might do for a short period of time. The professor, yes, but you can't live with that level of fear either. Anything else you want to add? That's great. I used to work as a psychologist with people who used to drink too much, and we were trying to develop a new kind of intervention. What could we do to help these people? It was tailored to this group. These men were also overweight and their calories were mostly from consuming beer. So we were looking to help them with losing weight and drinking less in one. And the best thing we were able to do for them, which actually was a suggestion from them, was that they got together in a group and talked through with other men in similar situations what would the benefits be of reducing their alcohol intake. And it was amazing the effect that it had, because they sat and chatted in groups of maybe 3 or 4, and one man in particular stands out for me because I was going around giving suggestions about how would have helped with this reduction of alcohol intake. How would it help? How would it have helped with relationships? How would it have helped with finances? Okay? And he said, for me, it would help to take the bins out. I can't take the bins out. He was so unfit. He had some steps in his building, okay? He had some steps in his building to do, and he couldn't do them, okay? He couldn't walk the steps. So it is very much about listening to the person and getting them to figure out, what's my motivation for reducing here? What can I focus on? What would the benefit in my life be? And it can be really surprising things that you would never even think to suggest. Would you think you have less chances to get liver disease in the future? This is like a normal thinking, that's what we probably would have thought, right? If I don't drink, or if I drink less, I have lesser chances to get liver disease, cancer, blah, blah, blah. But this guy, what did you think about? He would have been able to take the beans out, okay? So, but some other people might think, I want to be able to take the beans out, okay? Professor said, we are going to look at the assessment. The assessment template is using the Rolf model based on the what, so what, now what, okay? I can answer any questions. Then we can actually start the reflection. Student, I'm a bit confused to be honest because blah, blah, blah. Can't understand the words. And the professor say, let's jump to the professor. Sorry, that's me. Let's jump to the professor's answer. The word count is tight. You're right. So you don't want to add anything that doesn't add or answer the questions for a start. We are not looking for a massive amount. In regards to global citizenship and behavior change, we want you to link it to that. But you don't have to write a massive amount. It's just to show that you are kind of understanding how your particular activity relates to the broader, to what the module is about. Okay, so I repeat, okay, it's just to show that you are kind of understanding how your particular activity relates to what the module is about, okay, or the broader overarching themes of the module, okay? Perfect. Okay, so you don't need to put a lot of details. It is really about just linking the fact that alcohol is a global problem so that you can link the activity back to that. Even in a sentence or two, we are not asking to go into a lot of details, but the reflection part is to focus on the activity and the key learning of week one as a whole. That's what you want to be focusing on, okay guys, as students. So we should mainly be focusing on what we have talked about today, the motivational interview, all the contemplation stages and stuff like that, and just mention them. For example, I've put some of Scotland's statistics and then as a global problem, and then on the so what we have basically talked about today, the behavior change and communication and everything like that. Professor says, in a reflective way, there's going to be other sessions in which you can ask questions. I'll open the guide using the Rolf model. Now you can spend 10 minutes just working individually about this section, and we'll come together as a group to discuss, and hopefully we can learn from each other. Professor says, what I find helpful when I'm doing something like this, doing a bullet point list of what I learned, and then audio not clear. I'm sorry. A student says, would it be all right to say you are reflecting on how you communicate? Could you put a reference, then audio not clear? Sorry. Professor, anything that you learned that could go on the so what part as well. Then chat for 5 minutes. Then professor says, is any group happy to start to talk through what they are thinking about? We start with the what section. What kind of things are you thinking of putting into your assessment? A student, the activity chosen, why you chose it. Another student, what you thought you already knew, but maybe you did not. Professor, yes, anything else? So this is somewhere that you can link this activity to the broader overarching module themes. You don't need to mention them all. Global citizenship relates to this activity. In parentheses, alcohol consumption is a global problem. Close parentheses. Anything else in the what part? A student says, in the what part I mentioned the World Health Organization and what the statistics are for what the global problem is for alcohol. Professor says that could also fit in the so what section because that's about your learning, but if it was something you already knew, it's fine. It kind of fit in, it can fit in either, okay? In either, okay? It can fit in either, okay? So a little bit of confusion, okay? Anyway, what about the so what section? Student incomprehensible words. Professor says, the week 2 activity is today's session plus the pre-reading. There is also the incomprehensible words, maybe required reading. You can bring it all. So let me try to to restate it again. Professor says the week 2 activity is today's session plus the pre-reading. There is also the required reading. You can bring it all. Okay, so there were some ununderstandable, incomprehensible words, so I apologize for that. So what would you do differently as a result of what you learned? These should go into the now what. So I've put the word should into parentheses because I'm not entirely sure. So this should go into the now what. Student, I think it's just ensuring that you are relating all back to yourself. This is a self-reflection. So what did you do? So what did you think you know? What didn't you know? And how are you going to change it in practice? And how does that affect that? I repeat, what? So what did you think you know? What didn't you know? And how are you going to change it in practice? And how does that affect that? So always related back to the practice. Professor said, if I think about marking last year, students did not say, I will make this change. They didn't relate it back to themselves. They didn't make it clear what they will do differently. They maybe talked about some things that could be done differently, but they didn't kind of say, I will do X, Y, Z. So it's important to do that to make sure you answer that question, okay? Okay, what will you do in practice? Okay, anything else in the so what? Someone up here said something about communication and teamwork. Student said, and leadership. Professor says, yes, you can bring those as well in the so what section. What you have learned about working as a team. The other thing that you can do, so if you have done the pre-reading before today's class, you can kind of reflect on how that helped you and facilitate your work in the class. If you hadn't done it, you can also reflect on how that made things quite difficult, not knowing what we were talking about basically. Okay, but you know, who would admit that in the essay? I don't know. Student said incomprehensible words. Sorry. Professor said it depends on how you want. If you are talking about something that you have learned, then yes, it goes in the so what. If you just want to say this is what we worked through in the class, then it will be in the what section, describing what you did. You can mention it in both. You can say this is what we did in the what section, and then this is what I learned to do with it in the so what section. Clear? Yeah? Student said incomprehensible words. Professor, anything else in the so what? What about the now what? There was no question, so she went forward. What about the now what? Student, how you are going to implement this into your practice? Professor, yes. What would you do differently? Okay. What would you do differently? Anything else? You could also link it back to the broader themes there as well. Like, I will do this, and then thinking about global citizenship, how then you are contributing to ... how you are being a global citizen by doing whatever it is you are going to do as a result of your learning. Yeah? Perfect. Let me read it again. You could also link it back to the broader themes there as well. Like, I will do this, and then thinking about global citizenship, how then you are contributing to, how you are being a global citizen by doing whatever it is you are going to do as a result of your learning. Anything else? What kind of action do you think you will take going forward as a result of your learning? Student, not understandable. Other student, I suppose I would put the holistic care bit in there as well, not just the alcohol as an issue. Another student said, not understandable words, I'm afraid. It's important to understand that in the future practice, you can't save everyone. You should realize your limits of what you can achieve. Not understandable words, I'm afraid. Do what you can. Professor said you could put that in the now what. It's important to be aware of the way you word it to make sure you are saying what you will do in the future. Let me read it again. Professor said, you could put that in the now what. It's important to be aware of the way you word it to make sure you are saying what you will do in the future. Okay. Another student, it is important not to put pressure on ourselves. If the patient dies as a result of that addiction, alcohol for example, or you can't make that change, don't blame yourself. Professor said, make sure it has to do with you personally and actions you will take. Make sure it has to do with you personally and actions you will take. Another student said, it's such a difficult topic because it's so socially acceptable to drink, especially here in Scotland, in UK, it's hard to tackle it, and people get to the point where they do have a problem because they think they drink the same amount of alcohol as their friends. And here the activity ends. Bye-bye.